just to kind of run into it. It's nice because people's reaction to this, it usually looks like a 15-year-old's bedroom with an office in the middle of it.
This is exactly like the bedroom I used to
love, yeah.
with microphones around everywhere.
JobsWorth, Season 3, Episode 8, The Music Makers. Welcome to Episode 8 of JobsWorth, Season 3. This week's guests are Mark Barnacle and Mike Barnes, co-founders of Essex-based charity Together in Musical Expression, or T.I.M.E, as they're more commonly known. Along with co-founder Rob Fillery, Mark, Mike and their growing team are on a mission to break down barriers and bring people of all ages and abilities together to experiment, grow and have fun through music. Both of this week's guests discovered a love of music at a young age with bands like Nirvana, the Foo Fighters, the Sex Pistols and many more, awakening aspirations of becoming rock stars. Little did they know that years down the line they'd be using their musical talents to provide a service in Essex that is quite literally changing people's lives. We discussed the pair's earlier careers, including Mark's experience working in the care and education sectors, explore what life was like for Mike growing up and working on his family's farm, and learn about how they first met and forged a successful partnership they have today. We also talk about knowing when it's the right time to make the permanent transition away from your day job and invest all your energy into something new, as well as getting some really useful info into setting up a charity. Definitely worth a listen if you're on the fence about taking the leap and starting your own thing. A few weeks ago, T.I.M.E celebrated their 10-year anniversary. It's quite the milestone, but a look at some of the projects they've been involved with within the local community and you'll come to the same conclusion as me. They're just getting started. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to two musical maestros who have become rock stars in their own right. Mark and Mike. I'm going to start with this question that we open every podcast episode with. And Mike, because you're making eye contact with me, I'm going to start with you. So I apologise. But when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So it sounds really cheesy and typical, but I wanted to be a rock star when I grew up. when I was like sort of 12, 13, I think I remember seeing back in the day, Paramore was my first gig.
Nice.
And then I think shortly after that, I saw Foo Fighters live for the first time. So they were my first like 2 gigs. And I think the Foo Fighters one in particular, I was just like enamored by Dave Grohl. And I was like, I want to do that. And watching like Taylor Hawkins on the drums as well.
Oh, yeah.
That was just, like so inspiring to me at the time. The way that those like shows made me feel was like, oh man, like never felt like anything like it before. And I was like, I just want to do that. I want to make people feel that.
How old were you? Do you remember how old you were when you were seeing Paramore? Or you're making me feel old, Mike.
Yeah,
because I remember Paramore at college, and I was just like, I was into that kind of music. Is that the same sort of?
Yeah, we're probably a similar sort of age.
Okay, yeah. But do you mind me asking how old you are, Mike?
Yeah, so I think I was about 12 at the time.
Okay,
about 12, 13. So probably not the best music taste at that age, but they're this kind of that's I think when a lot of people start to really like get into music and they find, I don't know, like a band or a style of music that really starts to resonate with you rather than just listening to like your mum's CDs and what your mum bought you for your birthday.
I remember that vividly. It was all the Now albums.
Yeah,
a lot of Wet. Take that. Yeah, I remember that. But yeah, you develop your own taste. And then I vividly remember listening to like Tenacious D for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And just being like, music can be like that. Like it can like real storytelling. And it's very different genre, I guess.
I remember watching that music video for, is it Tribute?
Yeah.
Like that MTV and back in the day used to be massive, didn't it?
Yeah.
I remember watching that video over and over again. Absolutely loved them at the time.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, the reason I asked that question at the start is to see how it links to what it is you're doing now. So obviously music at that time was a big focus for you and then continue to be, which we'll touch upon in a second. But Mark, when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I didn't really get a clear image until I really discovered music and was shown how to play the guitar and was shown Nirvana. That was the first thing that really made me, similar thing, think I'm going to be in a band and I'm going to do that. Because before that, like my dad had so many different jobs, but he always worked for himself, and he was like a market trader. He had a fruit and veg store. He'd do net curtains. He had a second-hand shop for a while.
Wow.
He'd do like house clearances. He started picking up tires at some point from like Belgium and France. So I just always, and I'd go and work with him at the weekends.
Right.
and I'd go and do stuff with him. So I just had that in my head from like sort of junior age. I just remember thinking, I'll just do something like that.
So it sounded like he was a guy that, if you had to think of the epitome of jack of all trades,
he was like
is that the kind of description? I don't mean that in a negative way.
No.
But yeah,
I
it
love
sounds
that.
like he's got a lot of plate spinning.
I really enjoyed seeing that as well. He'd always have his little book that he's scribbling stuff down, and his little bureau that he'd have things tucked away, and his like little money bag for the markets, and I'd have a little one as well, that I'd go
nice.
there. It was a bit kind of Del Boy-esque, the sort of upbringing like that, a garage full of random stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he'd give me like, I'd set up little stalls on the market, so if he was doing like these kind of antique bits or house clearances, I'd like pick a few things and I'd have that down the end, and that'd be my little thing that I'd be selling for the day on the market, and teaching me little slogans and things to say. And it was great, man. So I think my earliest memories of work was that, just seeing my dad get up and do all these different things. So I kind of envisioned a life like that. And then, I was shown Nirvana as a 12-year-old. And then I was like, I just need to do something in music. That was when I had this clear image of, I just want to be doing something in music, which when you're that age, it's like, I'm going to be a rock star. I'm going to be in a band. I'm going to go and do that, just play guitar, which gradually evolves into other things.
Do you think, speaking to a lot of kids at that age now, do you think that is still the case when they're 11, 12, 13, they aspire to be rock star? Especially if it's that kind of music, I guess, isn't it, that you're listening to?
Yeah,
I think it's still the case.
I think it's moulded and changed a bit. I think people, like, at least a lot of the young people I work with are sort of more into their rappers and stuff now. I don't know if that, I don't mean to generalise, but yeah, a lot of them tend to say things like that. I think social medias have a big influence as well in like what we seem that children and young people seem to want to aspire to.
That's a good point. I think that is a really good point. It's a fear for me as a parent now with a 6 and 3-year-old son, like what that turns into by the time they get onto social media, which is obviously a very hot topic at the moment anyway. But yeah, I can imagine that it has evolved and morphed as music has changed too.
Yeah, I wonder if they see those kind of pop stars, rock stars as like influencers rather than kind of living that musician life. Whereas before you'd have a CD sleeve or whatever, and you'd hear them on the radio and you'd have posters on your wall. Yeah. Now you've got your TikTok feed and you're seeing them like market stuff and building their brand. And
that's a great point. Yeah. We've got that connection to rock stars like we never had, I don't know, 20 odd years ago when posters on walls, CD sleeves, looking at lyrics, just getting excited about getting an album for the first time and pulling the sleeves out and looking at like the physical copy, like, which is why I'm now gone like into vinyl again, because I just love having a physical copy of something. And the technology still blows my mind more than streaming. Seeing a needle hit a vinyl and music play, I can't get my head around that.
Crazy, isn't it?
Streaming is just so commonplace. Watching that is crazy to me. And I feel like, I don't want to sound really old.
Well, this it does that to you, doesn't it? As soon as we start talking, I should think, I'll get to that point.
I think we're hitting the demographic of the podcast, aren't we? We're safe.
But I think you're so right. I feel like we're so... like we're sort of drowning in content, I think, these days, and particularly like saying from celebrities or people you follow or bands or whatever it is. It feels like you just have sort of so much access to everything about them, whereas it used to be like the only things you'd sort of have were these tangible CDs or like the odd interview, like the interview with your favorite artist would feel like quite few and far between, and like you'd cling on to all these little things and they'd be more important, whereas now, like, if a celebrity isn't uploading like 10 times a day, their PR team's like, what are you doing? You're not uploading enough stuff. And it's sort of, we've got so much content now. It's hard to know what to sort of focus around.
I know when I was at college, it was NME magazine, and you grab NME and just like the band that you love would be on it, and you'd read that interview. And that might be the only interview they do for a year, 18 months, 2 years, and you would just treasure that copy of NME. You treasure the CD and you just play that CD on repeat. I wasn't driving when cassettes were the only way you could listen to music, but I hear about like speak to my parents and literally just over and over and over again a cassette going in, whereas now the whole world is accessible in buttons very quickly.
Yeah, I totally, man. And on that note of sort of having that sort of tangible thing and physical records, I remember the first time I discovered a hidden track on a CD. Just leaving my room after, and to bang on about Nirvana again, but it was never mine, and I thought it just finished, and then this big noise just erupted out of my bedroom.
Oh, wow.
What is that? Where's that come from?
Yeah.
Run in the bedroom and the track's on like 13 minutes or whatever. And you're like, this hidden, I didn't even know that was a thing, you know?
Cool.
So then I was like, as soon as it finished, I grabbed like Queens of the Stone Age,
just
Foo
played it all
Fighters,
on.
and just went to the last track.
Were you just
fast forward.
Did that lead you to a lot of disappointment though, Mark?
Yeah, there's a lot of radio silence after.
Mark's just sitting in his room again listening to...
Yeah, is he all right?
But it makes for this kind of like almost like legendary, like mythical kind of like feelings, doesn't it? It's like secret things. Like
I think that's so cool. It's experiential, isn't it? Like you've just got more to it than what we're experiencing now. But I really don't want to make myself sound really old, but it's nice. I think there's nostalgia, and that's not a bad thing to talk about.
Yeah, massively so. And it is specific, I think, to generations, isn't it? And equally, the sort of younger generations, as much as we don't sort of see it, there'll be things that they have. Oh, do you remember this like TikTok thing? I sound well, I would say that. Remember that TikTok thing? But there'll be something like that only grows with their generation, and they'll be like, oh, do you remember this? So I think it's important to like, you know, that everyone has their own things they clung to and things they're going to remember really fondly.
We'll talk about the project you do as part of your charity as well, but the one that me and my other half were just sobbing over yesterday was the work you did with people with early onset dementia. We're talking about memories, we're talking about that nostalgia, like that, you know, having those conversations with people that are, you know, on the precipice of potentially losing those memories or losing the ability to pick out those memories as readily as they have done previously. I think it's just lovely, the nostalgia chat.
Totally. And on that note, that was such a powerful thing to conduct in that environment, because a lot of the sessions we do is about music participation. It's inclusive. We want to make music accessible and make people realize everyone's got something to contribute, you know, like some form of unique creative expression. And then when you work within dementia, obviously a lot of the time you will play Buddy Holly, Elvis Presley, Sweet Caroline. You go for these really familiar songs that spark this something in someone, and they will start discussing their upbringing, where they grew up in the East End or when they got married. And the idea of songwriting was like, how's this going to work? Because you're recalling a very recent memory. We're there one Tuesday, we'll see you next week, and do you remember that chorus? And it blew us away, because the amount of people that would soak in, or once you started the chord progression, or you played something familiar, or you started to speak about it, you'd see so much come flooding back. And everyone you saw in that video is living with that condition, you know, various stages. And that is their contribution, a lyric that meant something important to them. And I think you said a beautiful thing. It's no coincidence that they would say stuff like my first child being born, you know, or walks on the beach. These like real, just pure natural things, not about how much money you'd earn or whatever. Like just really lovely, heartwarming moments. It was amazing.
And it's the lesson that I think that a lot of people in the latter parts of their life are trying to teach everyone, that just feels like we're rushing around like headless chickens, trying to climb up the next rung of the ladder, which is, you know, and you roll your eyes at it a lot of the time. Advice from your parents is always like, and then you see it happening and you're like, oh shit, I should have listened to that. But it's like, slow down, because it's the material stuff isn't going to be the stuff that you look back on. Every memory in that song, which we will talk about in a little more detail later on, is an experience. It is relational thing with a human being, as opposed to, I remember when I bought my first house, or I got this great car. One's talking about that.
This is it. And even if you were to think to yourself, like, right, if the world were to end tomorrow, if you were to look back on your life as it is, like, what are your most treasured memories? And I guarantee all of us here would say similar things, like first child being born, or like getting married, or whatever it is. It's those sort of like simple everyday things that are the most important. And like being able to speak to someone at the end of their life, knowing that you know, they haven't got loads of time ahead of them, and they're confirming these things, like it's just about going for
we need to listen to that.
Exactly.
Take it as a listen and go forward with it. So we talked, but both of you then seem to have like similar ages, 12-ish years old. You've seen a band, that band has resonated, connected with you deeply, and you thought, I need to be doing something with music. So Mike, tell me then, from 12-year-old Mike that listens to Paramore or whatever bands you were listening to at the time, what do you do? How does that route into music start then?
So For me, it was, a matter of just getting into bands as soon as I could. It first starts with like learning an instrument.
So I'm going to break this down a little bit and interject at points. What was the instrument you chose to pick up?
So I started on the drums. So my mum and dad were in bands ever since I was young. My dad played guitar, my mum played bass. So I felt like at that point I was like, I kind of want to do something a little bit different to start. I started picking up the drums. My mum very kindly got me an electric drum kit for one Christmas, and even more kindly let me play it in the house because it must have drove her absolutely mad, man. Like I know it's an electric kit, but the tapping that ran through the house must have been so annoying. I just learned over like the course of like 2 or 3 years, in that sort of time as well, with my dad and mum playing guitar. There was just guitars around the house, so I'd start to pick them up and trying to pick out songs and learn little chords and stuff like that, and then that drew me into joining a band at school. I had some friends that played guitar and sung and stuff like that, so we sort of brought a band together. We just sort of like, you just get older, you get a little bit better, you write some songs, record some songs, start to get your first couple of gigs and that, and just sort of like, carried on like that. And I just found a lot of solace in doing music. And at the time, specifically as I got a little bit older, towards sort of like 15, 16, where like, I don't know, your self-image is so like the most important thing in your life, and your relationships with other people become very important. Like I started to experience a massive amount of anxiety. Really, really struggled when I was younger. And ended up with, every time I went into school, I remember like for about a year, most days I'd have like a panic attack at school. Really? Getting really, really bad. And one of the things that proper helped me sort of get through that was playing music, as cheesy as it sounds. I remember like the first sort of big gig I had where it was more than like my parents, like I remember we played the Rayleigh Mill, and at the time it was a big scene and there was probably like 100 odd people there, maybe more. So it felt like a really big deal to 15-year-old Mike. Yeah. And I remember feeling super anxious before all these sort of same feelings that I'd have at school came over me. And I remember like in the second song, just being able to shed all of that anxiety and worry, and I just completely lost myself in the music. And I think particularly with drums as well, because it's such a physical thing, your whole body is like lost to the kind of music. Again, as cheesy as that sounds, but it's so true. And
I get that.
I found myself just reflecting on it and being like, for that last half an hour I'm in front of all these people in a place that I'd normally feel awful and so anxious and so worked up, and I've just been able to just completely lose myself in this thing. And I think that's the first sort of thing that sort of clicked to my mind as to like, music can like genuinely really help people, like sort of offering this big therapeutic benefit. And that was one of the seeds that sort of started and got me into working with T.I.M.E.
Have you realised that in hindsight, or did I love it how we're referring to 15-year-old Mike? 15-year-old Mike, did you realise it at that time, the kind of therapeutic angle of it, or is this in hindsight? Because I'm thinking about myself at 15. Maybe I just didn't have that kind of experience to relate it back to. But did you realise? Did it kind of hit you at that point?
Yeah, I think the initial seed of it did. I don't think I was aware of the sort of wider.
Maybe it would have been hard to articulate it too at that point. Like, it's a difficult thing to do.
And I think, but just that initial thing of I normally get really anxious, but in this frame, I can alleviate myself of that anxiety and that pain through doing something like music. I just found that really interesting.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It kind of connects with what Mark was saying when you sort of get up on a stage and you've got your guitar, and that's kind of like a way of channeling like this confidence. Or I think some people might listen to that and go like, the first thing that came into my head was like, you can hide behind a guitar in a way, but that's not what you're talking about, and understand that. But it's a way to channel something, isn't it? Like that instrument is a way of you channeling something. So talk to me about your kind of journey, that evolution from, again, 12-year-old Mark. Mark, when you were 12. Getting into music and exploring that further. Did you have musical influences around you like Mike did?
So there was music in the house, a lot. There was music in the house. When you was listening to some bands earlier, it did make me think of what my dad's household would be like. And I was going to throw Simply Red into the mix there.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
On there, but you have to kind of acknowledge the stuff you heard when you're growing up. But yeah, my dad would listen to stuff like that, Rod Stewart. But then he loved like Madness and the Specials. Because my mum and dad separated, so I'd be with my dad's at the weekend. And then at home with my mum, it was more like Fleetwood Mac, Eva Cassidy, a lot of Madonna. So I definitely have like a soft
it's eclectic though. You're getting like
so there wasn't like a lot of like heavier music. I suppose ska was the sort of avenue into guitars potentially, but I didn't realise at that point. And then when my mum met someone else who she's still with, and I just refer to as my dad as well. He's a great guy, and he started playing me things like Waterboys, Sex Pistols, and Nirvana. Nirvana was the first thing. He was like, "Have you ever heard this?" And I just remember that CD. That sounds crazy, but remember that CD going in because it was just such a pivotal point in my life. And it was like it when people talk about something washing over you, and it's just like, oh man, I just had this feeling of like, I just got to do something with this. This is just incredible. Listen to the whole record. And then it was a few days later, we used to do these things where the family would come over, we'd put like a projector on and they'd play like all these old slides. And my stepdad, he got his old battered guitar out of the loft, and my uncle taught me how to play James Bond.
Nice, yeah.
And I just sat in the corner of the room just playing this all night, trying to get it right. And then he was in a band, my uncle, so I went and watched them. All in the space of about a week or so, this happened. And then they recommended a guy called Joe Hymas, who's just like this famous guy in Basildon, just an incredible character. Pretty much everyone in Basildon who played guitar learnt from him. And I went, and about a week later, I went to see him, and that was it. I was just immersed in guitar.
It's hooked.
Yeah, just totally hooked. And similar to Mike, started to form like a little band at school, and then joined a band I was in for a long time when I was about 16. And then my mum was working in an SEN school, and she invited me along to do a music session when I was like 19. I was like, I can't sing. I couldn't sing then. I still can't sing now. But I was like, what can I do? And I just went along with this guitar, played a few songs, started to pass instruments around, and it just opened up this whole other world of like communication through music and feeling vibrations. And some of the kids there would just put their ears on the body of the guitar. I had a violin with me and they'd hold the bow, and it was just like, man, all these things you can do with music. So sort of touching on, sorry if I've gone off a bit off subject there,
no, that's okay.
Touching on what you said, for me, it just gave me this like wealth of confidence within music. Like most 15, 12-year-olds, all that sort of stuff, struggled with other sort of confidences elsewhere. But that was just like, if I had music around me, I felt really good. And then to see, that was the first time I saw what it was doing to other people and how you could like facilitate that and open other people up to the possibilities of what music, participation and just being around it can do to you.
And at 19, again, like, did you connect the dots? Did you ever... What was the time span between 19 and then when you set up the charity, if you don't mind me asking? How long between those points?
So we've just celebrated 10 years of when we registered T.I.M.E. So
congratulations, guys. That's a massive milestone. It's huge, isn't it?
But obviously when we registered, we were still like in the process of, which we might touch on later, but like reducing our other hours in other jobs. But so I was 28 when we registered. From sort of 19 to 28, I would like teach guitar. I'd go to my mum's school once a week, most weeks in term time. And a guy I was doing music with would come along. So it was quite loose, but I was like, I really enjoyed doing this. But I still had those, I guess, your rock star eyes on, where it was like all about the band. That was the most important thing. Just be in the band, be at the studio as much as you can, gig as much as you can, try and push it, but teach a bit of guitar, go to the school, work in studios, just kind of like ad hoc stuff here and there. But then gradually I was like, I want to do this more and more. I met another guy called Rob who runs T.I.M.E with us, and we decided to launch it. And then shortly after we met Mike, just as all that was coming together. So that nine years in between was there. And I was always working within sort of disability and SEN, but it wasn't the focus, but I was aware of the difference it could make.
And that's, and again, because I'm thinking of myself at 19 and I was, so my mum's who comes up on the podcast too much, but she's featured in the podcast, which we'll talk about later. But I was doing some work with my mum, like as late teens, early 20s, and doing workshops. She's a ceramicist. So we used to do, clay, artwork with clay. And some of that was at SEN schools and seeing again how getting your hands on something tactile and it would just transform people's experience. And that was really great. But at 19, I don't necessarily think I appreciated what I was around and what I was experiencing as much as I do now, looking back at it in hindsight. So yeah, I was just wondering, from 19, what's the gap then to going to actually realise that the charity is being set up? Because you're still, 19 is like a formative time. You're still working out who you are, let alone the impact you can make for other people. But that's just lovely that you carried that on. It's a big leap, isn't it, from going to say, I want to be a rock star, which again, and also sticking with something as going through your teens and sticking with an instrument. So I have tried to learn to play guitar. I've had piano lessons. My brother had a drum kit. He had a trombone. We don't play any of that now. But at the time, we were like, Mum, please, can I have this? Can I have this? And you do need something about you, whether it's a real passion for that, whether it's music or specifically that instrument. You need some stickability, don't you? You need the consistency to do it. Do you think you can learn that? Do you think you had forces around you pushing you to do it? Or is that just an innate thing? Were you born with something that thought, that's it, I just need to keep going at this?
I think it's a combination of things. I think, like we were speaking about, I think we both have such a passion for music anyway, and resonate with it so much anyway, that I think it's always... I don't know, it's always just sort of been impossible to kind of like detach, at least myself from, like, if I've got a guitar sitting in my living room and almost every day I can't help myself but just pick it up. It's just kind of like I don't know, instinctive.
Like a reflex almost.
Yeah, it's just kind of like just kind of part and parcel of your life, even if it's in a small way like that. You're just picking up your guitar for like, even if it's 5 minutes every day. Or always just listening to new bands or records, or being going to live shows or anything. I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people are just always into music. It's just in a slightly different frame. But I think the working with time, I think, is what's really cemented at least my sort of connection with music, playing an instrument and stuff like that. I think because, well, I got involved with with T.I.M.E in its infancy before it was a registered company when I was 19. And at that time, well, Mark and Rob had set up this like weekly group for anyone with additional needs to come along and just make music. There was no sort of like, you could just come, whoever you were, whatever background you were, and you could come and make music with Mark and Rob. And I started volunteering with them. And I think after the first or second time I came along, I was just like, this is absolutely sick. This is just like, I just need to be doing something like this as much as possible. I just love it. Saw so much in it, and I think it gave much more purpose to like being involved with music, playing a guitar, than just doing it for myself. And as much as I still had that dream of wanting to be in a band and be a rock star and stuff, suddenly it was like, there's like a real purpose to this. And I found like, this place of belonging within that. So I think to have a group to go along to like once or twice a week, really start to drill in music into my life in a more permanent kind of way, and it just grown from then.
But purpose is a word that comes up a lot on the podcast, and definitely when I'm speaking to people in my day job, talking about careers and finding a job that gives you purpose. I think that's what everyone is fundamentally searching for in what they do for a living. And if what you do for a living can then help the greater good too, and society, community, then you're on to a winner, aren't you?
Yeah.
How do you go about making money, that not as the charity, but as individuals that want to do something in music? I mean, Mark, you've kind of given a bit of an insight there. You do a lot of jobs. You are keeping plates spinning in various different ways. But it's a long stretch to go from, I want to get into music, I want to do something with it, and then paying the bills. So before the charity, then what Mark, we'll start with you, but what were you doing to make ends meet?
Yes, it was exactly like you say there. From as young as I can remember, or in this kind of work space, it was always multiple jobs. And as you're coming towards the end of your 20s, you're like, I need to solidify something a little bit.
Right. It's
like
the decade thing, isn't it? It's 30s on the horizon.
Yeah.
Where am I at? Have I got my shit together?
Come on. But I was really enjoying it, and I sort of tried to always find a good balance of music and sort of, if I was going to have another profession, something that I felt again had a bit of purpose. So I've always taught a bit of guitar on the side. I was working in schools. I would have like part-time LSA jobs. I worked in homeless hostels around Grays for quite a while.
Wow.
And then that led to a bit more sort of one-to-one care work. I would go to supported housing schemes and do like a couple of days there where you'd help people sort of access the community and build independence. attendance, but they was always like 2 days, or I'd have a contract for, X amount of hours, or I'd be on the bank work so I could pick up shifts here and there. So I had a studio in London that we would have bands in to rehearse and record. So you do more at the weekends then. I did do a little bit like session work for people, a little bit of guitar here and there, go and play for people and earn a few quid, guitar-wise. It was just always, this mishmash of things. But I liked that. Your diary each week was always different. But then, like Mike touched on, meeting Rob and obviously then meeting Mike was a real big turning point of like, I think we could do this on more of a full-time basis. And because Rob had a similar situation, he was doing like a lot of art in the community with a local disability art group. We were like, well, if we just start with this drop-in, and we keep our hours going like we have in another domain, we can gradually reduce those as we start to pick up more sessions.
Yeah.
Just picking up what you're saying price-wise, like it was hard to start charging people because
I was going to say,
with this sort of thing, when especially working within disability, dementia, it's a sector that's so deprived of funds. So you want to sort of show value, and how important music is, but you don't want to go, well, if you can't afford it, we're not coming. It's not like, so a lot of the stuff we did initially was like freebies or really sort of just about making ends meet to cover the costs
or whatever.
Which I won't jump too far ahead with it, but that's eventually why the charity came around, because to have that funding in place, it's much harder to get the funding as a limited company, which we was initially and still are. The charity helped that a lot. So it was a tough one, hard to set your prices, hard to say no to people, but by gradually being able to leave our other hours, have the backbone of some sort of income. I think that was really important. So we could go and do these voluntary sessions, build these contacts. And a lot of the time, once you go into a home, you deliver that session, they see the impact that it has. They're like, right, we're going to fundraise. How much, and a lot of people say, we'd say a price and they'd be like, oh, your prices are too low. So these people, because they're working in this sector for the right reasons as well. Do you know what I mean? They're like, they want us to
It's a vocation
do well.
for so many people,
there we
isn't
go.
it? Yeah.
So they'll be like, look, well, how can we help you? So we had we're probably too polite at times, and then people were, sort of really nice to us, and just that kind of community feel, you sort of build the backbone of it and go from there.
That's learning though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like whether you're running a business and then running a charity, you have to learn, and you guys hadn't done this before.
Yeah,
this is all new ground,
and this is the last 10 years have just been a massive learning experience, really, and we're still all the time learning about all aspects of business and how to run things properly. And that's the thing, is although a charity is a charity and it's a non-profit sort of organization, it still has to run a little bit like a business. If you're not running it efficiently, it doesn't work. Just like a business, charities are still businesses. They've just got a different kind of framework. They just work a little bit differently. And I think this is another misconception when I talk to people about it. And I don't mean to sound shady by saying this, but not everyone that works for charities does it for free. You get paid for doing it, given we're not earning loads of money. We're not earning nearly as much as say someone who starts a limited company that does really successfully.
Of course,
but it's like Mark said, it's getting the bills paid, and we're able to get by. I feel like that's something important I want people to know, is that you can start a charity or a non-profit. You can earn money from it and make a really big impact on a community or a group. You don't have to always go down a business route of how do I sell a product, or how do I,
That's a really good point to make, Mike. So thank you for that, because my understanding of the mechanics of how charities run, I mean, Katie from Gold Geese opened my eyes a little more to that through the conversation I had with her and conversations we've had outside of that podcast episode too. But I think that's a really lovely point to make, is that if you have something that you want to put out into the world, it doesn't have to purely be a money-making enterprise. It can, if you can give back to the community, give back to society in some way, shape or form, then that's a route to explore. But also, I think there's this, it's not a stigma, but it's a preconception that everyone that was working for charity is doing it altruistically. So there's this completely, I'm going to give up all of my time, but you can't. If you really want to give all of your time into it, we all pay bills. We've all got mortgages, rent, whatever it is. You need to be making something from it.
Well, this is it. You look at really vital services like hospices. A lot of hospices are charities. They're on paper non-profit, but you can't operate something as intricate and as professional as a hospice on just volunteer work. It just doesn't work like that. You've got to pay people for their time, and unfortunately it needs money to run. Again, given you're not the CEOs and the managers aren't necessarily going to be on the same money as those in private sectors, but there's people that are making livings, working in hospices or working for charities. And yeah, it's just going to be more scrutinized. And I have to preface that you have to have a board of trustees that run the company. They are the top dogs and they can't be paid. They must do it on a voluntary basis. However, yeah, the people that work for the company, they can be paid.
You need to earn a living, don't you? Yeah, exactly. Talk to me then, Mike, just quickly, because I've asked Mark, but how are you making ends meet? How are you making money before this became like the full-time endeavour that it is now?
So yeah, I got a bit of a weird career. I still run this, but I grew up and run a family farm. So
this is one of the things I picked out of the YouTube video that I watched on you, and I did want to explore that further. So thank you for bringing that up, because I was wondering how the hell do I squeeze this in? But you brought it up, so go for it. Okay.
Yeah. So just really briefly, I grew up on a family farm in Rayleigh. My grandfather used to be homeless, and he worked his way up renting land, making a bit of profit, getting a bit lucky here and there. Eventually bought his own farm, then expanded it a bit, and I just sort of grew up. He was a big inspiration to me, like proper businessman. Similar to sort of Mark. I remember going around Malden Market with like a van of potatoes. We used to go and sell potatoes on the weekend and like drop off big bags to people's doors and that. And I remember being in the fields when I was like, must have been like 9 or 8 on like potato harvesters, like chucking out these like rank potatoes from this big harvester thing, and driving forklifts as a little 10-year-old.
What an experience though. It sounds like such a great thing to have had as part of your childhood.
Oh, it's beautiful. And then to sort of grow up in the countryside like that was amazing, and to have sort of a little bit of space you can call your own. Do you mind me asking, because
I grew up in Rayleigh, so but where in Rayleigh was the farm?
So it's down the end of Ball Lane.
Okay.
There's like this sort of like looks like a private road, sort of like
I know it well.
by trees.
I had a friend, I won't name him, but I had a friend with a house it was the last house before you went up that private road.
Oh right, no way.
And maybe it was your granddad, but I remember me and my brother being in that field as kids and being chased out of the field.
That was probably my granddad.
What a small world. I remember that vividly.
I was going to say.
He had a picture up of you for ages. Have you seen this guy? But that's that. Yeah, what a small world. But I had to ask because I grew up in Rayleigh, so I was just wondering where that was. But it was lovely. Like fields for just I mean, the landscape has just I'm old again. But the landscape has changed a lot. But it was just such a lovely part of Rayleigh specifically.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was links all up to Hockley Woods and now it's obviously like prehistoric woodland. So it's beautiful to grow up in a place like that. And as much as it was an amazing place to grow up, and I love being involved with it. Still am involved with it. Still run it with my family and stuff.
That's amazing.
It's a very isolated job, I think, particularly in the last like 20, 30 years. Like what used to be, you go out with all your mates and harvest the fields, and what my granddad used to do. It's now like you just sat in a tractor all day on your own. So I think that's what led me to doing stuff with T.I.M.E. was I just was on my own all day in this tractor in the cold, in the rain. Wanted to be a rock star and wanted to do music, and I didn't have that sort of outlet. And then my sister knew Rob at the time, and she was like, oh, they've got this really cool like inclusive drop-in thing they're doing in Basildon, you should come along one time. And then like I said, after 2 sessions with Rob and Mark, I was just like, this is amazing, I need to be more involved with this kind of thing, I need to do it more. So that's how it started,
kind of all bedded in from there. So that's obviously how you two met. So what's the chronology from you go to the first session or the first couple of sessions, and then you start to decide, okay, we're doing what we're doing to make a living at the moment, how do we make this shift from this where we are now to then going full-time with the charity? I know it's a hard question.
No, it's cool. It's good to talk, man. It's nice to reflect on that, especially with the 10-year anniversary coming up. We have these conversations quite a lot. It's been beautiful to be at this point. We feel very, very lucky. So Rob was in a bit of a tricky situation because he was running the art community service that he had with a couple of other people that he'd known for a long, long time. And we'd reached this point where we were doing sort of music sessions under their umbrella sometimes with these drop-ins. But we had a sort of a little bit of a disagreement how it would be set up and delivered. So we just had to make a bit of a decision where I was like, well, I feel we can make this more of a full-time thing. he would need to take a bit of a leap if he wanted to do it as well.
Yeah.
We was obviously getting to know Mike really well and was just blown away by what he brought to the room and his enthusiasm and youth as well, because older. And we just made that decision to go, okay, well, look, we can survive on what we're earning from our other jobs at the moment. If we gradually reduce those hours while we pick up sessions, let's see if we can slowly turn this into a full-time thing. And over the course of about 2 years, that's what we did. We spoke to a lot of care homes. We would do the whole sort of school, door to door, talking to people, ringing them. You'd get a lot of, we'll ring you back. Activity coordinator will get back to you, and they wouldn't.
Yeah.
We'd just persevere, get some flyers made up, carry on running that drop-in. Obviously, I'd done a bit of work within sort of local care homes or schools. So I'd go back to those people and say, look, we're running a music service now. Do you want a free session? Just getting by for a while until eventually we had 3 or 4 days where we were out doing music sessions every day. And like you sort of touched on earlier, if someone sort of parachuted you in now to run in this organisation and run in the charity, it would seem so overwhelming. And we get people ask us, how do you get to that point? And how do you sort of manage your finances and learn about cash flows or whatever, all this admin that comes with it? It's like you just did it step by step because we had no other way. Just something would come around, or you'd hit a certain milestone with income, or a door would close on funding and you need to find something else. And you just learn about it. And I think because we always had those lives where we was used to going, okay, I've got a couple of hours here. I'm going to pick up a bit more guitar work. I know that person in the studio. I can go and do that. We just got by until suddenly you look back and go, oh, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, like full time, you know, and you meet with the accountant and it goes up a little bit and you can kind of breathe a little bit more and you can go to a few more services, buy some new equipment. I remember when we used to have like printed out sheets because we couldn't afford an iPad, you know, so we'd have these song sheets like on this music stand. And obviously some schools you go to, the kids are grabbing them and running off and you're halfway through a song you haven't quite learned properly. Like, what call does it go to? Like, and then we're, oh, right, we've got enough money to buy an iPad. Right, let's do that. That makes a lot more sense. And just always been this gradual progression. And then it was 4 years ago that we managed to get the charity number, which, you know, was a whole new journey that we're still learning about all the time, but gave another, not quite security, because you really have to be on the ball with it, but another kind of option to bring on more
It's
work.
a different chapter, isn't it? And it comes with its own, I guess, bureaucracy. It comes with things that you have to, there's more stringent things that boxes you have to check. Putting a lot more things in place. But it's like the evolution of something. And it should, and it's right, the service you're providing with the impact you're making should be something that is funded. And I'm going to talk to you about how you fundraise, how you make money for the service too, a little bit later on. But yeah, was it scary when it sounds like it was a very kind of like, the transition wasn't just one day you switched everything off and then you were just full time in it. It sounds like it was a nice kind of transition over time. And then before you knew it, you were like, wait a minute, was it as simple as, are we doing this? Like, is this our full-time thing now?
Yeah, I think there was a realization where I was like, oh, I've not sort of worried about having to pick up a lot of other work at the moment. You know, or my diary is suddenly really busy with these things that I'm loving doing. So to have that realization was great, you know, and then what a beautiful feeling. But there was nothing, you have like your overwhelming days and weeks and things that are like, oh God, how are we going to learn this new system or this new thing that we've got to do or deliver this big project? But again, if you was parachuted into it halfway through or now, it would seem very daunting. But because there was a team of us that were really like-minded, really had a similar goal, you know, places we wanted to be and things we wanted to do, we always had that support from each other. And you mentioned Katie, you know, just the people like that you get to know in the community. Like I grew up in Basel and I didn't move to Leeds till I was about 8 years ago, so I was 30. But then my wife knew of Katie, so then you get talking to her and we was going to try and do the charity thing, and she told me a bit about trustees and AGMs and like just getting that going and fun. You just being out there and talking to people and learning from them was one of the best things we've done, really. Just put yourself out there.
It's a very, I guess it's a similar journey in terms of setting up the charity with Katie in that she's gone through an experience and then seen, I guess in her scenario, she's seen what was lacking in terms of support out there too, but she's gone and set up that charity and learning as she goes. She didn't know what she was doing by her own admission. And then to build that as well. And same as building a business. And I guess it's a really good point. I'll highlight maybe the lesson for anyone listening to this that is on the fence about doing something themselves or going it alone, whether it's business, charity, is that you cannot have the expectation that you should know everything before you do it.
100%.
It is completely unrealistic that you are going to have your shit together completely to say, now I'm confident to do it.
I think, you've really got to take it just one day at a time. And it's just tiny little incremental improvements over time. Like every week, we just have a meeting, all three of us every week, and we seem to always find like loads of things to talk about. And as much as like it feels like not a big deal. When you add them all up over the course of a year, all those little meetings, all those little admin days, you look back over the course of a year and you're like, oh, actually, we've done loads of stuff. But like I say, we never had any sort of like business training or like never had any experience starting a charity or properly running a business. I think both of us had that from the stories you said about my grandfather and your father, like running their own thing and trying to sort of scrap together what they could and like trying to make something work and seeing that process. I think we've both got a similar thing like that we really like watching, building
that
something.
Drive and that ethic comes from somewhere, doesn't it? A work ethic has come from those experiences. Similar to myself, like I don't need to be working for myself, but I've seen my mum be self-employed since I was a baby, and that's all I know. I'd struggle to be I think I'd struggle if I just sat there and go, what, you just work for other people and they tell you what to do and you've got no autonomy or freedom to go and do that. There is something to be said from the experiences of what you are privy to when you're growing up, clearly. But I do think it does change that work ethic and that internal drive that you've got.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so 10-year anniversary is a big deal. Did you? Was I sat in the hatch when you took your selfie?
I think you actually were.
I think I'd spoken to someone that morning and I saw you guys. Yeah. And Rob must have been there, right?
Yes.
Rob was there. Yeah. Okay. Because I met you guys by chance at the hatch.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get Ralph on, like the guy that runs the hatch.
Yeah.
And
perfect. Isn't it?
Yeah, I spoke to him. Ralph, if you're listening to this, you've got to come on, because basically a lot of the people that are now on the podcast, I meet at the hatch. But we met because I overheard some conversations about recruiting and hiring people. So I'm going to ask now: have you hired someone now?
Yeah. So funny
enough,
they know? in that selfie we took with you in the background was our new member of staff.
That was the guy.
So
I was wondering if that was the guy that had joined. Well, congratulations, because and this is the first person that you've had to hire externally to you guys, or have there been others over the years? Or
well, we've had others. We had an amazing girl called Emily come and work with us for about a year and a half, 2 years. And she was more like, her place was funded for her first 6 months with a group called Creative Estuary, and so she came in like unexperienced, and she was amazing.
Wow.
That was the first time we'd properly employed someone completely separated from like just our friends or people we met at the hatch necessarily. But actually that's another story. So like she unfortunately left us at the beginning of the year, and we identified that we definitely needed to fill her boots with someone else, and that got us onto this journey of employing
bringing someone
our now member of staff, David, who weirdly enough we first met at the hatch, and like
obviously,
and just like yourself, like we were there talking about time, and this guy just came over and he was like, "Oh, sorry to bother you. I just heard you talking about this music charity. That sounds really cool. Like, can I just ask what that's about?" And got us chatting,
so cool.
And he ends up sort of volunteering with us for a little bit, and then we did go through the formal interview process, and we're really, really lucky we've got 20 people or 19 people apply to the job. We interviewed 5 people who were all amazing, like genuinely incredible, and we would have happily taken any single one of them. But this David just sort of went above and beyond.
That's so cool.
And the fact that he, I don't know, came over and introduced himself and made himself known and got involved outside of the job process just spoke many words, you know.
That's brilliant. Well, congratulations, because that's a big deal, going through the whole hiring process. And it's also is a great lesson in the power of networking, isn't it? And just being out and about.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, especially in these, like, I would call it, Ralph isn't going to like this, but I call it like a community hub, the Hatch.
Yes.
The flow of people through there is incredible.
Yeah.
And all you need is just that little bit of confidence to go, guys, or like say hello or shake hands, whatever it is. And I've done it to a few people now. And I made it very clear to you guys, I wasn't asking because I wanted to do the hiring for you. I was just like, maybe I can help. And I think that's a really lovely thing. I've been on the receiving end of that so many times that you just feel, I just want to pay that forward as much as I can. And that's what I like about Lee in general. I think there are some really lovely spots. It's got its challenges, Lee. You know, I won't talk too much about them, but the community feel around here, I think, is amazing.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, but I think in particular, people that are really like passionate about doing their own thing, like yourself, like the fact you're doing this podcast and you're trying to make it work. There's so many people like that, or like Katie from Gold Geese, another one we bump into at the Hatch all the time, or like Ralph, or there's so many other people like that are just really passionate, got a really cool thing going on, and they're really trying to make something good work. I find that that's like you say, like such a community like that around Lee.
Yes, definitely.
That's why it's lovely. Yeah, to be able to do a lot of stuff around them.
Sure. I really enjoy that about the community, and I felt weird about moving from Basildon to Lee. Maybe you have these sort of preconceptions, like you say, about certain areas, but I've loved it. I've really got that vibe straight away, like the creativity, the independent businesses, whether it's the coffee shop or the skate shop that we used to have that looks like it's sadly going, I think, and just things like that in your local community. And the Hatch, I think you're spot on with that. I mean, Ralph's probably going to start charging a finder's fee, and he's right, we talk about.
Well, I'm wondering when he's going to start. Like, I introduced myself to him the other day in the hope that he'd come on the podcast, and he's on the fence. I'm sure, Ralph, you've got to come on the podcast, but I'm just worried he's going to start charging for desk space soon. Right, but it's just I work there because it's just such a lovely environment.
It's great, man. The amount of people I've met, and same with Mike. Like my wife does work in other letters as well, and knows that family. She's known them like when Lynn Tate used to be the Lynn Tate Gallery. So she knew Lynn really well. So I've got to know that family through Poppy, and that space is just utilised really well. It's really welcoming, really warm and open, and just a good vibe. You need that in this sort of community.
And great Wi-Fi. Which helps. It helps. Okay, great. So I want to talk specifically about the work that you are doing as part of T.I.M E, because that's something that we've kind of not. We talked about some of the projects at the start of this, but I want to delve a little bit more into it. So talk to me about the kind of work that you do and the impact that it makes on the community and the people that you're working with. So I'm just trying to think of how best to start this. Can we talk about some of the specific projects? Would that help rather than it really broadly? Talk to me then. I'm going to talk about the project that you've done with people with early onset dementia. So tell me first about how that comes about, and then a little bit about the journey that you go on with everyone involved in that too, if that's okay.
So we initially, again, talking about networking and putting yourself out there, so Peaceful Place is the place you went to deliver that project you spoke about. It's early onset dementia home, day centre in Basildon. So it takes in people for the day that have early onset dementia and gives them activities. They're looked after, they get made lunches and stuff, and it means a lot of them can lead independent lives. So as opposed to like a home where they're looked after like 24/7, it means they can still go back home to their family, or if some of them live on their own, and they can still have their own lives, but they're sort of catered for in the day. They're looked after, they're checked in on, and they've got stuff they can do. And I think with a lot of people with dementia, and it's sad to say, like a lot of the homes, particularly the ones that are poorly funded, a lot of the people can sit in chairs all day and that deteriorates their condition. So places like Peaceful Place are so important because it gives them so much stimulation and so much to do. And keeps them. We've seen such a big impact on that sort of setup for them compared to other places. But sorry, going backwards. So we initially made contact through Charlotte, who is the CEO of Peaceful Place, through a networky kind of event. I did a presentation at an Arts Council event, and I got chatting to Charlotte there. Spoke about T.I.M E, and she just sounded really interested in it. And we ended up meeting with her, and then now we're working Peaceful Place 2 days a week.
Oh wow!
Delivering sessions there, and it's been amazing. It's been we've been there for 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, maybe sort of around 3. Yeah, to about 3 years. Yeah.
And it's been amazing.
What's the impact that you've seen of the work that you do with the people that go there?
I think, like Mike says there, through no one's fault, in certain services, the funding's just not there to have enough staff to be engaging with the people in some of the elderly and dementia care homes. So somewhere like Peaceful Place obviously has a bit more of that. And when you provide music, it never ceases to amaze us, the amount of staff that come over and say, we haven't heard this person talk before, and then they've just sung all the words to Can't Help Falling in Love and started talking to us about their first dance at their wedding, and then they might slip back into, you know, a regression and become quite isolated. So like confidence, self-esteem, mobility, like physical movement, the amount of times these people are so sort of withdrawn, they just come alive. You're playing all shook up or something and they will be out of their chair dancing. And for us, we come in the room, we don't know the whole backstory. So we might just think, someone's maybe a bit tired today, you know, or a bit run down. But the amount of people say to us, it's really hard to get them to communicate or get them to move. Music in dementia it's mind-blowing, man. It really is. Like I say, for the verbal, the communication and the physical mobility, it happens on such a regular basis, and the amount of staff that tell us that they're just seeing things. And then they will feed back to us as well. They'll say a family member have said they've noticed a difference that evening. That might sort of slip away. Obviously, that's the sad reality of that condition. But one of the early people we met, again, with that networking, we went to something, Dementia Friends and Dementia Alliance, I think it was. And a guy there called Carl, he said to us, even if the person you're providing this stimulation for can't tell their support network that evening what they did that day, they will feel better for it. And there'll just be something about their demeanour and their manner that just, you've had an impact on their day. So don't worry if they can't tell you 10 minutes later what song you just played or recall something. You're just having this positive well-being. And I think it's so important to remember that.
Yeah, and often we've found that, like, another thing that he said was, like, they may not remember why they're happy, but they'll know that they're happy. Do you know what I mean? So being able to go in and deliver something like a music session that makes them happy, like I said, you may not remember 10 minutes later what just happened, but they will be in a positive mode. They would reflect the kind of emotion that they've had that day.
Well, physiologically that is doing something, isn't it? It's releasing things internally, like on a physical level, that they may not be able to communicate or even know what that feeling is. But you know, dopamine is just one example of that. But there are good happy hormones being released when you feel that.
And within dementia as well, it's I'm not the best, like, scientifical sort of mind about it. I can't remember the exact stuff that goes on in the brain when listening to music, but I know that with music, the part that like stores memory and emotions, and that particularly around music, the part that stores musical sort of memories, or how you can remember the words to a song you haven't heard in years, that part of your brain is one of the last parts to sort of that dementia reaches when it starts to like sort of take over the brain. The first bit is more like the short-term memory, which is again why they can't quite remember what they'd done that morning or if they'd made that cup of tea or whatever. But things like music, or like that the song that played on someone's like first dance that made them really feel something, that kind of like really beds itself into the brain. That part is so well protected from dementia that's why when you go in and you play a Can't Help Falling in Love, suddenly so many people can remember the words and have this deep emotional reaction to it. It's because physically in the brain, that part's still there and it's still working. And I think with music, it's so universal. Like when we came into this room, all of us spoke about like our first bands that we really liked, and it resonates with everyone. Like if we were to go out onto the street now and ask a random passerby, who's your favorite singer or your favorite band, they would instantly know, like off the top of their head. I would hope, like 99% of the time, I would hope they would have a strong answer. But if you were to ask them, who's your favorite painter, or who's your favorite poet, or who's your favorite writer, a lot more people, I think, would struggle to answer the question. And that's not putting any shade on those other art forms, but it's just recognizing how universally loved and appreciated music is, and how embedded it is to a lot of people's sort of emotions and their memories.
You're completely right. And yeah, universal is the right word. And it's a language, regardless of what language you speak. Like a melody can have exactly the same impact on someone, regardless of whether you speak the same language or not. It's how it affects you. And there has been research that maybe I could have done, drawn up some of these figures and stats on the research of the studies that are looking into the impact of music on patients with dementia. But when you've seen it in real life, that's the difference, isn't it? Like, because you can look at numbers and think, okay, well, it's opening this neural pathway, or it's creating this physiological response. But you guys have been in the room when this is happening. You've seen the response to music, and And I think that's just amazing. And I think actually the projects that you share and that video that me and my partner watched last night, which is holding on to those memories, the song that you did, it just opens your eyes to it. Till you see it, I don't think people can really, it can't hit you in the feels like it does.
Yeah.
And we watched it, we were just in bits. Yeah,
that's really kind to say, man. I'm glad. Had hopefully it was a positive feeling.
Completely. But what it does as well is makes you want to help. It makes you want to support in ways too.
And I think that's a lot of the time the perception of that condition can be just this blanket of dementia over the individual, whereas we hoped with that project that you see someone's personality shining through as well. You know, watch to the end. Those
the clips at the end, I was howling. They're so good.
It's great, and that's a room full of people laughing with that person.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And then it breeds that community. We will always try and do that wherever possible. And a lot of the time that will be led by the person who's participating. Their personality will shine through. You can't avoid it. And hopefully music is stimulating that in some way.
And I think it's breaking down a lot of stigmas, because if you found out someone had dementia, there's a lot of preconceptions that go into your head. Well, they're not, how am I going to be able to have a conversation? I'm not going to remember anything. It's going to be a real struggle to communicate that. So what you're doing with the work you're doing on projects like this is breaking down barriers, breaking down those preconceptions and stigmas and stereotypes. And just those little outtakes at the end, like the sense of humour of some of them. You're just like, oh my God, that's hilarious. But maybe people that hear someone's got dementia, they're like, no, I would never expect that to be the case.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's the same for a lot of the different groups of people we work with, and we work with a lot of people with additional needs as well, and it's very much the same with them. You know, someone I don't know, you're told that someone has like Down syndrome or cerebral palsy, you sort of go into this like, I need to act this certain way, and you sort of lose, I don't know, a bit of touch with like the human behind the condition.
It's the label that you're communicating with, as opposed to the person. So if you go in with all these preconceived ideas of, I'm going to be speaking to someone with Down syndrome, this is what I'm expecting. Well, actually just be willing to let that melt away when you actually have a conversation with that individual. And,
and I've often had people like either like friends or volunteers that have come along to like our club night or some of our sessions, and they've always been like nervous for that reason. They're like, oh, what should I say, or like, how should I communicate with them? And I'm always like, well, just like you would anyone else. Like it's not rocket science. They're all just like people that, and even if they can't communicate verbally, like you still speak to them in the same way. Like, hello mate, how you doing? How's your day going? Having a good day? If they can't communicate back, then you just carry on communicating with them in the same way you would anyone else.
Because I guess there's, again, they do not want to be treated as other. No one wants to be treated as other. They want to be treated like a human being, which we all are. So connect on that level. I will not say that I won't preach to the fact that I haven't been in those situations before where I thought, oh, am I saying the right thing?
Yeah, of course.
Am I communicating in the right way? But I've also been in environments where I've gone in and just immersed myself with people that are so... Yeah, you just connect on a human level, and all of that melts away. Within 5 minutes, you're sat there having a laugh with someone that maybe you didn't think that before you going into a room. And this is the other thing I saw on your website, and I think the night that you do at the Keys in Basildon, I just tell me about that and how the idea for that came around. So if you don't mind explaining to anyone listening what that is.
Yeah, so that started at the Edge Bar in Basildon 8 years ago or 9 years ago?
Yeah, just over 8 years ago.
Just over 8 years ago. And that was because we just identified that there was nightclubs starting, for people with additional needs. There was one in South Ockenden. There was one in like Benfleet, Hadley, and we was like, there's nothing going on in Basildon. Again, just networking through sessions we go to, we'd hear about these clubs. And a lot of the time, they were held in sort of community halls, or old church halls, which is nothing against that environment, but it didn't quite breed or represent that inclusive nature that we, a bit like you're touching on there, was like, well, why shouldn't there just be a nightclub where people can go, and if they want to drink, they can grab a beer and they can see their friends and they can dance and they can request songs and like be this inclusive environment. So we sort of sought around the local bars, and the Edge very kindly said they'd host it, and we just started to promote it like we did everything else, went door to door, rang all the care homes that we knew, said, look, we're going to run a disability inclusive club night, come along. along. And I think we had like 8 people come on the first one, or maybe 12 like, as a maximum, and then just kept going weekly and built it up to the point of before we had the edge, we'd have like over 80 paying attendees, and that's without their support network coming along. So you'd have 100 plus people in the room every Monday evening. And obviously some people require support. Some people initially required support, but then they would come on their own. Their parents might drop them off, their carers might drop them off, and they'd come back and collect them later. Some people would start to get the bus route sorted and attend on their own. It was building independence. It was promoting social inclusion. We'd like sort of try to facilitate creative expression as well. So we'd have jump up and jam nights where we'd go on as a band and people were like, what song do you want to sing? About One Direction. Okay, right. Yeah. We'll learn that and you come up and you can sing that with us. Karaoke like goes down a storm every week and people will be queuing and fighting to get up there first or get a second go. You do song request nights. We have external performers come along. And then sadly, the Edge shut down last year, and we just had to find a new venue. And the Keys have, thankfully taken it on, and we're just sort of building it again. But we have also, which is a good time to announce, I guess, we've just received funding from Essex County Council to make the night free for a whole year.
Oh, wow.
To try and, again, just boost the numbers and people that may be a bit reticent about coming along, come and embrace that environment, meet some friends, access the local community. So there'll be no entry fee from next Monday for a year.
That's incredible.
It's great, man. It's such a lovely way to start the week. I don't get to go there as much at the moment because of having kids, but I will be back at some point. So Mike and Rob are running it kindly.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful way to spend your Monday night. And like I said, we've been doing it, been going almost every Monday for the last 8 years. And such a beautiful community there. The people that come regularly have just like built such a strong network of friends and people there. And it's just so wonderful to sort of see that, like to see people come 4 years ago on their own to now like having this big network of people that like cheer them when they come in, to be able to be like, this is cool. Being able to create the foundation of that. And it's amazing. And like Mark said, the fact that we've been able to go free is so amazing. Like we've wanted to do that for such a long time. And that's why we started the charity alongside the limited company, to be able to do things like that in the things that are so vitally important, like having a place for these people to belong. That's what Involve really is. Be able to come and do something like that for free and just having that accessible to you is so important. And that's really what we're trying to drive with the charity, trying to just make these things that should be basic available for everyone, no matter how much money you have.
Without going into it in too much detail, because I can imagine the process to get funding through Essex County Council is a process. That was learning, wasn't it? That, like the whole process, start to finish, was like, oh my God, what are we doing here? Is it as involved as I imagine it to be, or were they do you have to show, okay, this is the sort of outcome we expect to happen if this gets funding? That's what I'm imagining it to be.
Yeah, I think there's variants where you've always obviously got to show the worth and be like, this is our idea, this is our experience in the field, this is the people that we've liaised with to highlight the need. But then there's sort of variants of how intense that can be. Right. And when you go to more like your body's like a council, that classic thing of a lot more red tape, a lot more involvement, a lot more departments, which is fair enough. That's everyone operates in different ways. So with this process, it was a lot more involved. Excuse the pun. But it took a lot longer than some funding applications, but we've learned from it. And also we've made new contacts. We know people in these departments now, like commissioning officers that you'd hear about that department, but we didn't know anyone directly there. But then they come from a very strong, passionate place like we do. They work in different departments, but they come from the same ethos of just wanting to provide and have things going on for the community. That why should it be any different? You've got your mainstream clubs and nights and events. Okay, they're not all free entry, but like we touched on earlier, maybe people in underprivileged communities or disabled services, they haven't necessarily got that funding to go and provide a lot of activities. So it's been a really nice sort of marriage between the two to work with the council like that. They're happy for us, obviously, to say that they've been part of that process. And we've definitely learned a lot from it and excited to make it free.
And it was really nice as well. It's not the case with all funding applications, but the Essex County Council one from Involve was nice because we were actually approached by Essex County Council because they were keen to help us and do something with us. They'd seen what we've done at Involve and they were like, we want to help just get involved with this and just help you out, make this more of an accessible thing. So again, it sort of shows that it's not necessarily like a big, you suddenly have to do like a massive funding application and do all this stuff. Sometimes it is just again, those little things day by day, building it, and then people start to notice.
Well, it comes from your credibility, I guess. Your time served. Sorry again, pardon pun. But time served, the credibility. All of these things compound upon each other, don't they? To then get you noticed, make you a bit more visible. So that's congratulations, because that's a big deal. So that's fantastic.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Right, time is where it is now. In 5 years' time, why can't I say time now? How many times have I said time in this bloody podcast?
A lot of people would do that over emails to us as well. We'd go to there's a care home in Corringham we'd always go to, and the lady would create a different post a bit. It's that time again. It's time to dance. I don't know how she kept it going for so long.
Anything for a marketing pun. But 5 years' time, where would you like to see yourselves? What would you like the charity or the business and the charity to have achieved? Have you got, without saying tell me your 5-year goals, but imagine your future selves in 5 years, what would you have liked to achieve? What's one thing that you would have liked to have seen happen?
Yeah, I mean, in the simplest way possible, not to sort of dart the detail in any way, but to make more people aware of the benefits of music, and to reach more people with our ethoses and purposes, as you sort of outline in a charity bid, the purpose of the charity. Because every home we've been to, we've seen the impact. So the idea is just to scale that. And by bringing on a new instructor, the first time we've had to do that outside of a funded body, we feel like we're going to learn a lot from that, because we was having to turn away clients or say, look, we can't take you on now, but at some point we will. So we hope this is the start of that next phase where we build a team outside of 3 mates that got this going, expand that team and start delivering those benefits to more people in the wider Essex area. I hope that answers your question.
Better than I imagined that you were going to answer it, to be honest with you. Going back to the hiring, because this is my own curiosity coming in just because of the space that I work in. 3 mates start a business, start this thing up, right? And then you hire externally for the first time it ended up being the guy that David, ended up being David that came over and introduced himself. But how do you kind of, sieve out all the traits that make you 3 what you are and then put them into a job description? Has that been difficult? And do you feel like, obviously you've got to say yes because you've hired him, but obviously David has ended up kind of fitting that criteria, but was that difficult?
Yeah, and it's hard to say, because when you've been running something as friends for so long, you sort of have almost like this certain unsaid things or way of doing things that you just almost don't think about. They become just sort of I don't know, in the background, and for example, if Rob's going to go out and do a session, that he's going to do a really good job and he's going to run it well, or you come to a meeting, I know what Mark's going to have prepared, or I know we have all these sort of unsaid systems in place that work really well, and then to sort of bring someone else in is like, oh right, okay, how's someone else going to take fitting into that, and how they're going to work around it, and how are we going to advertise for a role like that. So it was tricky. I think you just got to do your best, writing out that application and that job description as best as you can. And we sort of hoped that, I think the biggest thing was to find someone that wanted to make a difference. As cheesy as that sounds.
But again, identify someone that saw this as a vocation as much as it was a paid piece of work, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was, I think that's something that we all hold really dear, is how can we impact people? How can we make a difference? And how can, again, this idea of making people belong. I think that was the biggest thing for us, seeing that in someone else. And again, we were really lucky in that all the people we interviewed, I feel had that. They were all really passionate about wanting to make a positive impact on a community. But it just, just an extra bit of sparkle was from David. But those things sometimes are so hard to come across over in a CV or a covering letter. And this was really frustrating about sorting through them. That was the most hard thing is, and in a lot of ways, David, we almost we didn't give David any advantage, but because we saw that spark in him from before, we were like, oh, we know he's kind of got this thing. And we want to see that similar spark in other people. But you can't get that over on a CV,
Yeah. There's an initial filtering process in there that we've been meeting with a business advisor once a month. She's been great, just all online, but she's given us some really good advice. And she told a story in the build up to this when she was hiring like an admin assistant, was it? And there was like this form that had to be filled out, and there was a couple of boxes that need to be ticked on the back, and like half of the people hadn't ticked it. She was like, well, that's gone straight away. This is an admin
for
role.
an admin assistant, eye for detail,
Totally,
straight away you're gone.
So there's like these tiny little things that you start to notice in applications, that someone might have had a really good background in music, they're sort of highly trained classical pianist, but just something would be missing maybe from that care element that you say, or that kind of background. And then it's just little nuggets, because of course in an hour interview you're not going to get to know someone as well as you will over the 3-month probation period or whatever. But just those little moments where they would mention something that came across from their heart, from a bit of personal experience, something they've lived through, something they've seen. They like you've done. They watched the Holding On to Those Memories video. David was able to like quote lyrics from it and say about how much this had an impact on me. He had good questions for us. He could relate kind of experiences of music to things in his life. Like, I'm not saying everyone has to have this pivotal moment in life, but when you are stepping outside of your comfort zone for the first time, and like you say, bringing someone into that team, it was like, right, he said so many similar things to how we feel about the situation. Even if he hasn't been to this home that we go to, he's done his research, he's got something else in his life he can reference of how music has changed him or someone else. And we were like, okay, that feels good to us. Like,
yeah, totally. I think sometimes it is easier to filter out some of the people that aren't applicable. Like, we had someone from Iran, a potato farmer from Iran,
I still think
apply for our job. We were like,
maybe someone in the future. You
never know. Yeah,
he might own your
he could have had that spark. Yeah,
but I mean, your insight into my world, you'll get hundreds of applications for jobs of people that just sit like easy apply, whatever it is. They just sort of load and then fire it out there. But it was an interesting point from, and again, having gone through. It's me and one other person now, but I went through a hiring process and I went 5 years without ever wanting to hire anyone for the reason that I would find it hard to disseminate all of the stuff I do on a daily basis and teach someone. Because when you're only looking after yourself and when you've been 3 people setting the business up from the start, you've got this unspoken language that you don't need to go, would we ever put this in like idiot notes or a book or like a and then that scared me, if I'm perfectly honest. That scared me how I do my job day to day, because then I thought, how do I do my job day to day? And then finding someone that is going to represent you and your brand that you have poured this energy into in the right way. And I think that's probably more so for you guys such a big thing, because you need someone to care. You need someone to go to a session and be confident that they are going to represent you in the way that you have built your brand and that credibility in the space.
Totally. It's a tricky thing, man, that message has got to be carried across, and that was the hardest thing, because I think from the admin perspective and the roles that, you know, David will inevitably get involved in some way, if you build enough systems, you know, we've watched a lot of those kind of YouTube videos of that sort of creators or whatever, and they will reference like the sort of McDonald's model, like you could be sort of airlifted anywhere in the world to McDonald's, and there's such refined systems that you could pick up that role really quickly. And that's a great example of how to run a business, and you try and bring that into your day to day. But yeah, the actual delivery of what we're passionate about, you can get a vibe for it, and that's what we've gone on, and he couldn't have sold himself anymore, but you then have to just see that in full action and hope that you've got that.
It's not fully tangible, is it? No. It's really hard to make it like 100% guarantee that I can pinpoint exactly what makes it, but a lot of the time it is a feeling. And people that interview are taught not to just go on feeling. But you have to. We're humans, connecting with humans.
Yeah, this is it. And I think our exciting thing with this as well was that we are potentially opening ourselves up to someone that maybe doesn't do the job exactly like us, but that adds something else. That even is someone that's more qualified, you know, like someone, with lots of experience or has done a similar project somewhere else, and they bring their own ideas, and then it grows in that kind of way. And I think that's been the journey over this last year. I think has been all about that. It's been about sort of growth and expansion. And although we brought on this new member of staff in David, we have also done a lot of work in outsourcing a lot of things this year, and we found that to be a massive game changer. And it feels like we're expanding the team, but we just haven't got them on a contracted arrangement.
I know exactly
do you know what I mean?
What you mean.
And it's about asking ourselves things like, well, what aren't we the best at? We can't replicate ourselves and do 2 jobs at once, but where are maybe like some holes in the business, and things like grant writing, as much as we do them, and we've been pretty successful with quite a few of them, that, you know, trying to apply for a lot of money through very specific funds like lottery or arts council, that sometimes just takes a refined eye, someone that's done it before, that knows the ins and outs, to say, no, you need to make sure that this is in there, you need to make sure you have these statistics here. And so we're working with a grant writer at the minute who's amazing, and again, who just like expands and develops the team without him being technically an employee.
But there's various ways you can augment skill sets now, isn't there? And I think, again, for anyone that's on the fence about starting up on their own, first off, it's a good exercise to go through to identify strengths and weaknesses as early as possible. And then if you're in a position to, if you've got the means, outsource it. Because you'll enjoy your day-to-day more. It'll put a hell of a lot less stress on your shoulders, and you'll get things done quicker. So from a productivity perspective, you're not going to be, because like you said, you've had success doing it, but I can pretty much guarantee you probably don't enjoy it. And it takes you away from doing what you want to be doing, which is the delivery, I would imagine. So it's good advice. Identify the weaknesses, and then if you can, augment, outsource, delegate. To the
and I don't think there's anything wrong with, like you said, like you dip your toe in and you learn a bit about it, because then when you do outsource it, you've got a bit of a perspective about who's really good at that sort of. And we learn a lot. The funding applications is a really good example, because they are so time consuming. And initially, like, this is really exciting, I'm getting to sell the project and the charity. But then you're like, this is a lot of pages, a lot of keywords, and then you get that initial rejection. You need to expand on this, then they reject again, and it's like you'll get there, but you go to someone who's been doing it for 20, 30 years, and they get through the door the first time, because that's what they do.
That's great. Okay, well, thank you for the insight on that. I just think, from the hiring angle, from how you grow things and outsource and stuff, I think that's I was just curious. How do you guys make money? Like what? And if anyone is listening to this and thinking, I want to support this amazing charity and help you in that endeavour, what are the ways that people can go about it?
So first and foremost, from the charitable perspective, we are open to public donations, and that's something we want to raise the profile about, because it tends to be when people do hear about it and they see something like Peaceful Place, that holding on to those memories is the most recent project we've shared, that we're trying to get we're trying to find a PR company to get behind it and push it, because we do feel like there's a strong message there.
Brilliant.
So that is, we're very lucky when people do see that. We tend to, get some donations, but we need to raise the profile. Other than that, it's a lot of funding applications. So that's why outsourcing was a big one, because then if we can get a project funded, that gives us some sort of sustainability. We're trying to take that to the next level so that there can be salaries involved, because at the moment we do run from project to project, or if unrestricted funds come in from public donations, we're like, oh cool, we can go to that care home that couldn't afford a session, because then we have that backbone and the money. So that is our charitable status. And then from the limited perspective, because we started as a limited company 10 years ago, we've still got clients that we was going to within that first year that we still see. There's one that we go to in Havering, and we usually wouldn't go that far with a small team, but because they supported us early on, it's like, well, let's go there.
It's a legacy relationship, isn't it?
And we've built that Thursday around that environment. So Rob goes to a session in the morning, does 2 hours of this service, and then does another one on the way home. And that's paid work, and that's sort of what starts to build your salary from the limited perspective. And obviously we had to declare all this with the Charity Commission. They knew about the sort of working relationship with both bodies. So you've got your regular income. And then with the charity, it's a bit more like, okay, it's a bit of a gamble. I think we can get this funded. Okay, we've now got, holding on to those memories will now be something that we show to other funders. Now that we've got this project that's gone really well.
Case study, isn't it?
That's it. Bang, there we go. Look at the impact that can have. And that should help the next funding application to hopefully work up the ladder.
Yeah, and it can be a little bit, feels a little bit dirty sometimes talking about money and income and stuff like that. But like we said about earlier, that's how companies have to run. Like we can't employ people if there's no money involved. And
got to lift the lid on that, haven't you? It's got to be a transparent thing.
This is it, But this is why I think the two arms of it work really well together and mean that it's sustainable. If it wasn't, we didn't have the private and the charity, it wouldn't be able to function. We'd have to find other jobs. And it's actually the case, and this is what's been really fascinating about building the business and T.I.M.E and the charity, is to see that I think like tons of other charities and non-profits do something similar. If you think about like a museum, for example, museums are generally non-profits, but they'll have a gift shop. So they have like a private arm that is selling stuff for profits that helps it helps it sustain itself.
Yes,
But it has like a limited side to it, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And we'll always, because that is that sort of tricky area as well. If you've got both services running alongside each other and you've got your paid clients and the people that are coming under the charity, it's like, how do you put them both together and make sure everyone's getting a fair service? So to start with, everyone that we see will always be free. Whether we've got a project funded or not, we will just look for the unrestricted funds or something to make sure that person does not have to pay when we first go. And then if someone is a long-standing client that pays for the services, whenever we get new funds in, we're like, can we go and do a run of sessions for free for these people? Can we do an extra session for them? Can we do something outside of the normal hours? Can we fund like a recording project? Can we film a video for them? Like, I'll always be thinking, how can we give them something extra that isn't going to cost them anything?
Yeah.
And I think when you spoke earlier about the sort of 5-year plan or the goal, and I think that's sort of where we're heading. We're more keen to try and approach big funders that want to make these sort of projects happen, and get funded for them, as opposed to having to ask for money. I think, it's just so special to be able to ring someone up and say, we've got this really cool idea. Do you want to make this CD? Do you want to write this song? No cost to you. We're just going to come and do it.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Really,
Imagine
really
receiving,
special.
like being in a position where you're receiving that call to or that email for the first time. You're like, oh wow, this is just such an awesome thing.
Totally, yeah.
That's great, and I hope the aim is that this podcast or people listening to this, it raises the profile and gives you an opportunity to promote what it is you're doing. Because again, the public fundraising and money coming in is so vital to what it is you're doing. So I'll be pushing this as much as humanly possible to get this into many people's ears as we can. But if you're listening to this and want to help, then there's donation pages on your website too, aren't there? If people feel compelled to go and do that, and then you can look into the specific projects that you guys have done through your website. But just make sure you have a box of tissues, or if you're a bit shy about crying, watch it on your own, because it's there's some emotional moments in there for sure. Yeah. Okay. Have you got any projects coming up that you want to talk about, or anything, events, projects coming up that you want to kind of shine a light on?
We've done a similar thing to the Peaceful Place video. We've been working with the Men's Shed in Billericay, which is another service that supports people living with dementia. And we've written a song with them that they titled Happy Shed, which is all about they sort of meet on a weekly basis, and it's just this really friendly environment where it started off. I think Billy Connolly did a similar thing on TV a little while back about somewhere in Scotland, where it was sort of men that were like tradesmen that once they sort of entered retirement, and maybe people that had early onset sort of felt like they lost a lot of purpose. So they would enter this space and they would be able to do like woodwork and carpentry and that. And I think this started in a similar way, but then it just spread to, obviously you realise how many people in the local area are living with that condition, or someone wants to bring their wife along, or maybe both people are living with that condition. And it's just this really supportive, friendly group. It's beautiful. So we went there and wrote a song with them that we're in the process of mixing. So that'll be shared at some point soon.
Awesome.
They're then going to play at our club night, and we're playing at the Volunteer Awards at Towngate Theatre in March, I think it is. So that's something that we're looking to promote. Obviously, the club night being free entry is a big thing that we're promoting at the moment. And we'll have like a Christmas fun themed evening as well involved, which is always a good laugh. And generally just keep an eye on the Facebook, because there's always a little songwriting project or just a moment shared from a session, or a sort of breakthrough that someone's had with communication or some sort of creative expression. It's coming out there on a regular basis.
Yeah, we've got a group called Caged Arts as well. They're a group of 3 lads that have formed this band called Caged Arts. And the 3 guys in the band have either got Asperger's or autism, and they've been making music with us for ages now. They sort of go back to the early days of like they first met us at the drop-in back at when I was like 10 years ago. They make like rock music. They play like guitar and bass, and they sing, they just write rock music. And they've got this new song they're about to release called Ain't Done Yet. And it's sort of like a country rock kind of thing. We're going to shoot the music video for it in the next couple of weeks, sending the track off to master, and so that's going to be coming out soon. I'm excited to get that.
That's brilliant. Well, we'll put as many links as possible in the episode description, so people can look at website, Facebook pages, and all the projects you've got coming up. We've got 2 things to close on. So I've introduced a game which you wouldn't have heard in Katie's episode, because it didn't feel appropriate to play that game in Katie's one. But it's a game of this or that. So you're going to have 10 questions.
Cool.
I'm splitting these randomly. So I'm going to ask alternate questions. 10 questions, 2 answers. You've got to pick one or the other as quickly as possible.
Oh, Jesus.
So, and try not to give context. You've just got to say the answer.
Just the answer.
And I do try my best to make these relevant. But it doesn't always go according to plan. So question number 1, Mike, we're going to start with you and we're going to alternate from there. Question number 1, live performance or studio recording?
Studio recording.
All right. Mark, question number 2, guitar solo or drum solo?
Guitar solo. I'm not allowed to give context, am I? Because I'm really not a whittly guitarist. So yeah, go guitar solo.
All right, Mike, question number 3, charity work or corporate work?
Charity work.
You've got to say that really as well. Yeah, that was an awful question. Question number 4, Mark, organising an event or being in the spotlight?
Organising an event.
Okay. Mike, question number 5, acoustic session or electric gigs?
Acoustic session.
Okay. Mark, question number 6, improv or carefully crafted plans?
Improv.
Question number 7, Mike, festival crowd or intimate venue?
Intimate venue.
Okay. Question number 8, hiring for skills or hiring for passion?
Hiring for passion.
Okay, nice. Right, Mike, this is specific to you. Nintendo Switch or Stream Deck?
Oh, man. You killed me. Oh, I've got to go Steam Deck, and I
Okay.
when I built my YouTube channel.
Is it Steam Deck?
Steam Deck.
Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Sorry, I do apologise.
No,
right.
it's all-
I mean,
it's
they
all-
could end up being a sponsor. You never know. Question number 10, Mark. Mastering the scales or learning the songs?
Learning the songs.
Okay. There you go. Thank you so much for getting involved with that. No context. You can't say anything about it.
Yep, cool.
Okay, the final, the closing tradition. If any of that doesn't make sense to anyone listening, you're going to have to go and explore some YouTube channels too on the
Do
back
some
of
deep
this.
dives.
Yeah, they're great. I just want to say they're great. Like your content is so good and it's
Thanks, man.
so well produced. Obviously, sound wise, visuals. So yeah, if anyone's listening and if you want to learn guitar, you both do you I don't know if I ever pronounce it. Is it Udemy or Udemy?
Yeah,
Udemy,
I was
Skillshare.
pronouncing it like Udemy for ages, and then someone changed it to me the other day. I thought I'm going to say Udemy.
Udemy,
Yeah.
Udemy courses on various topics and just a treasure trove of stuff that you can see Mark and Mike on. The closing tradition is a question from my mum, which is, again, it's something that stuck around. So we've got it here. Okay, so I'm going to play this down the microphone to the pair of you.
Oh, excellent.
And then see what she's come up with this week. Okay, wait a second.
Hi, Mike and Mark. What is the most unusual musical instrument that you've used in your projects? Thank you.
Unusual.
It's Lisa, if you wanted to. She always likes if people direct the answer to Lisa.
I've got an answer if you...
Yeah, go for it. I don't think I can remember. There's a couple that I can't remember the name of. But yeah, you go.
Cool. So, Lisa, thank you for the question. The sound beam, I think, is probably one of the most unusual, but also really like technologically advanced instruments we've ever used. It was initially designed for sort of the dance sector, performing arts, and it's basically like a microphone-shaped device that projects an invisible beam, and when you cross that beam, it can trigger a sound. You can change the length of that beam, so you could put like one scale into it, you could then put like 4 or 5 octaves of that scale, and it didn't quite work because you had a lot of people leaping out on stage and not quite knowing where the beam was, so it all got a bit messy. And then it found its way into SEN environments because people started to think, well, suddenly someone with the most limited movement, if they could move their right index finger, you could make that beam really small. You could fit a whole scale with a piano sound or a violin, whatever you load onto the sound bank, into that area, and suddenly that person could participate in music.
Wow.
You could load samples on there. It could be a car, sort of a horn. It could be a dog barking, whatever you want. Or you could have, a beautiful grand piano loaded onto it. And the inclusivity that created and that accessible music became because of that was amazing. So for any funders out there, we are trying to get the latest sound beam because they're a lot of money, but they are amazing instruments.
Yeah, I didn't know that existed.
They're very
Look into it,
unusual.
man. Sound beam, really.
Yes, that's a really good shout. Yeah, and like Mark said, even someone would say like very limited movement, if they can just move their hand, even a finger we've used before, like just moving their finger back and forth can create this sort of scale of sounds. And then you pick, I don't know, you play a song together in C, you pick the scale of C on the sound beam, and suddenly they're playing in tune to the song.
Wow.
It's amazing. Or on the other end, you get people that would love to dance in front of it, and we'd have people that really struggle to play like any kind of instrument, but suddenly they end up dancing, and again tune it to the song, and they're dancing, doing this amazing interpretive dance, their hands and their legs, and they're running back and forth and making these amazing sounds. yeah,
That's
it's
crazy.
super cool. Yeah, super
wow.
cool.
There you go, Mum. There's your question answer for this week.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, gents. And it's just been an absolute pleasure. And it just, like, for me, the power of networking shows I met you down the hatch and now we're doing this podcast. But just genuinely, I say this from looking into the work that you do and having had the absolute pleasure of sitting opposite you for nearly 2 hours. Just thank you for the work you're doing, because it's absolutely incredible. And I'm so glad that you're doing it. And I'm so glad that you took up so much of your time this morning to have the conversation. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. And we really appreciate the opportunity to highlight the achievements of the people that attend our sessions. And again, just to network, meet with yourself, talk to yourself. Been an absolute pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you so much, man. It's been lovely.
No worries at all. Thank you. Thanks for listening to JobsWorth. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to give us a follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, if you could take 2 seconds to rate the show, that would be awesome. You can follow JobsWorth on Instagram, where you'll get teasers for upcoming episodes, some behind-the-scenes videos, and the occasional bit of career inspiration. And if you'd like to learn more about my day job, then feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.